Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. If this is your first time joining us, this is the second part of our educational series for the beautiful rainbow nation of Malaysia. If you have not yet joined our group, Holistic Nutrition for Malaysia, you can just scan this QR code or search that group on Facebook. That is open to everyone, no matter where you reside in the world. Together with my partner in mission, Jin Kai Law, we are passionate about taking healing to the nations through holistic nutrition, but it starts with education and building a community so that we can learn and heal together. We're so excited for you to join us on this journey. If we have not yet met, my name is Bridget Spurgeon. I am a holistic nutritionist. I'm originally from South Africa. Trained and worked in the US for 25 years. And now my husband, Sandy, and I travel the world, immersing ourselves in different cultures, meeting people, learning about the food and the health needs of a country to see how we can be best of service. So our current initiative, like I said, is in the beautiful country of Malaysia, and it has been so exciting to partner and join with people to help them heal from chronic disease and prevent chronic disease. So in today's webinar, we are talking about the top inflammation causing foods. But first, I just want to give you an overview of inflammation. I believe as I educate on nutrition, it's so important to understand our physiology, because we need to work with our physiology as we incorporate nutrition strategies, not against our physiology, which is what happens when we chase symptoms and when we lean on medications and allopathic resources. So when we look at inflammation, it is our body's immune response to protect itself. So protect from threats. Those could be toxins, those could be traumas, whether that be physical or emotional, like stress, and from infections. So that could be pathogens like viruses or bacteria. We have acute inflammation and chronic inflammation. So inflammation is extremely important for our survival. We want to have a robust immune response and very healthy inflammation in our body, and that would be acute. But when that inflammation persists and when it hangs out too long, then that becomes chronic inflammation, and that is a major cause to our modern chronic diseases. So just to understand the difference here a little better, so our natural response to outside threats, so that could be an allergic reaction. I got bitten by a spider just a couple days ago, and literally, and I don't know if it's just my response to these to French spiders, but I had a tennis ball swell up on my foot. So that is my immune system reacting positively in a really good way. But that could be pollen, that could be a food allergy. It's just normal to get an inflammatory response. Could be chemical irritant. I think of cigarette smoke, pollution, like perfumes, cleaning products. I know I'm very sensitive to those. Infections, like I mentioned, virus, bacteria. Trauma, injury. So think about when you fall, or when you get hit, or when you cut yourself, when you get a burn. Think how that gets red and inflamed. That is the response to the inflammation. With chronic inflammation, like I said, that's inflammation that persists. It's also when the irritant persists. So for example, let's say you are living in a house that, maybe you're living with a smoker, or maybe you're living in a house that has mold in it, or you're living in a very polluted area. Now you have that irritant around you all the time. So now that inflammation is going to persist, and that will become chronic inflammation. But it also could be when there's something where your immune system hasn't been able to get rid of the threat. So let's say it's an infection and it's like fighting and trying everything it can to get rid of the infection, but that infection stays there. That also becomes chronic inflammation. So some examples of diseases that result from chronic inflammation would be cardiovascular type diseases, neurological, and that also includes depression, anxiety, ADHD, things like that. Autoimmune, which would be like rheumatoid arthritis or lupus or MS, Hashimoto, celiac disease. Cancer is a result of chronic inflammation. Fibromyalgia, just when someone has just this joint and muscle pain. This a lot of times it's like this unexplained pain that happens everywhere that persists. And then chronic fatigue syndrome. So if we look at the body and we think about if we have symptoms going on or a disease condition and our goal is to heal our body, we really want to be mindful of addressing the root cause of the problem and not chasing the symptom, right? So I've mentioned that before. So this is a reminder here when we're looking at the different ailments, different symptoms, different disease states, that inflammation is at the root cause of that. And then when we look at what the root cause of that inflammation is, a large percent of it is the food that we're putting into our body. Certainly there can be infections, there can be other things going on, but a large part of it, we can reduce that inflammation at least 80% just by controlling the food that we put in. And that is exciting, that is empowering, that gives us hope because we can control the food that we put in our body. So when we look at the brain, so when the brain is inflamed, this can lead to things, and this is based on the research: depression, autism, dementia, Alzheimer's, MS. That comes from inflammation of the brain. We talk about sugar, like Alzheimer's. They call Alzheimer's type 3 diabetes. That's because that is causing inflammation in the brain tissue. So skin. Now remember with the skin represents what the GI tract is doing, okay? So when we have skin conditions, we're also looking at that is inflammation in the gastrointestinal tract. And but that could be things like rashes, dermatitis, eczema, acne, psoriasis, and wrinkles. So I'm going to talk about this a little bit later. But interestingly, as we age, if we're aging poorly and getting lots of wrinkles, one of the culprits for that is it's called actually AGEs appropriately, but that stands for advanced glycation end products. And those are very damaging to our health and basically age us prematurely. So we'll get into that in a little bit. Cardiovascular disease. So that's also going to include the heart, of course, and then the arterial and venous walls. And so then this contributes to heart disease, strokes, blood sugar, blood pressure, and anemia. Kidneys, so you will hear me use the word pro-inflammatory cytokines. So that's a mechanism of inflammation. These can restrict blood flow to the kidneys. Complications may be edema, so swelling, hypertension, high blood pressure, nephritis, and kidney failure. We never think of bones being related to inflammation, but inflammation interferes with the body's natural ability to repair bone mass and can increase the number of fractures and can lead to osteoporosis. Liver is a big one. So buildup of this inflammation can enlarge the liver, can cause fatty liver disease, and increases our toxic load buildup because the liver is the main organ that helps us to detox. Thyroid, so the inflammation can cause autoimmune issues like Hashimoto's or Graves' disease. And that inflammation also, it reduces the total thyroid receptor count and disrupts the hormone function. With the lungs, the inflammation can also induce autoimmune reactions against the lining of the airways. And so this causes allergies and asthma. So once again, sometimes with asthma, we don't think of that being a result of inflammation, and literally just taking out some key inflammatory foods can help people heal from asthma. So the GI tract, our gastrointestinal lining, that is, and then this also, we'll look at our microbiome. This is one of the foundational ones here, one of the foundational systems and organs. So chronic inflammation, it damages the lining, and then can result in issues like GERD, Crohn's, IBD, IBS, and celiac disease. And then with muscles, these pro-inflammatory cytokines, they can cause that muscle pain and weakness, joint pain as well. And so that can manifest in things like carpal tunnel syndrome, polymyalgia rheumatica, and things like that. So as we get into the foods and ingredients to avoid, I say this a lot, it's not always what we see on our plate that's the problem. It's actually the things that are out of sight that then they're out of mind. And those are the things that keep us sick, keep us frustrated, and keep us from healing. So it's the ingredients that we don't know are there. And this actually is quite scary, because we get to a place where we feel like we don't have control over that, and it becomes very hard. We have to be very meticulous and intentional with our nutrition. And honestly, it becomes a bit of a chore, but it's not worth it to have these toxins go into our body and keep us chronically inflamed and sick. So that is my goal. That's my objective today, is to help you to be aware and mindful, to empower you to be reading those labels, checking your ingredients, eating pure, healthy food the way that God intended. So we're going to start off with the first one. So the first 4 ingredients or foods that I'm going to share today are foods that I personally never, ever, ever, ever put into my body. And, I say this a lot, even though I'm a nutritionist, I'm not perfect with my nutrition, and that is not the goal, to be perfect with your nutrition. The goal is to have a healthy body, to have a healthy mind, and to live a good, happy, purpose-driven life, right? So we can't live in a bubble. We can't avoid all toxins, but the healthier our body is functioning, the better we will be able to lead a healthy life. But there are things that, as I've done the research, as I realize how damaging these are to our brains and to our bodies, it's just not worth it. So my husband and I, and those that I teach and help with nutrition, these are things that we will look at ingredients and we will never put them in. So we can be on the same page in that. It's really just a decision to say these are the things. So we can be agreement on these top 4 items that I am going to share. And they're groups of ingredients, just a heads up. But artificial sweeteners, so these are the no-nos: aspartame, Splenda. Splenda, just so you know, is the brand name. Splenda is made up of acesulfame potassium. There it's abbreviated ACE-K, so you'll see that in an ingredient, and sucralose. Then there's NutraSweet, and there is saccharin. So they're basically, I don't even want to call them ingredients. They are toxins that are residing in things like diet drinks and sodas, sugar-free Jello, sugar-free desserts. But as my husband and I travel the world, surprisingly enough, we also see these artificial sweeteners in items that you wouldn't even think would have an artificial sweetener. They're just additives. And I think that is really interesting. It's almost like they're just either trying to get them into the food supply, or they're just trying to use them up. So we have noticed that in different countries, we have seen artificial sweeteners in milk, just regular milk. And obviously you're going to see them in a lot of like processed foods, cereals, candies, gums, things like that. So watch out for these. Let me go into the research a little bit, because there was a big study that came out recently, and I don't think that artificial sweeteners should be something that is controversial, because they're really just are so damaging, and why do we need to put them in our body? But there was some research came out recently about, there's a 1-year study that showed that drinking the diet sodas was conducive to weight loss. So I'm going to combat that, because there are a lot of personal trainers, nutritionists, dietitians, really, really esteeming the study and promoting diet sodas. And I think that is absolutely ludicrous, but it's so much more than weight loss, because it's not worth it to be skinny, but then have chronic disease. Would you be in agreement with that? So my background actually is helping people lose weight, heal their metabolism. And so I am very experienced in weight loss. And I'm here to tell you that you can lose weight and be healthy too. You can lose weight in a way that heals your body. You don't have to wreck your body with a goal to see that scale in a healthy range. So when we look at the research on artificial sweeteners that has been done, and I've always kept pretty current with research. And so I remember the first study that came out many years ago that showed that Splenda pretty much like wrecked the gut microbiome. So a lot of these artificial sweeteners, they have an antimicrobial effect. But the thing is, it's not like they're just serving they're not just killing bad stuff. They're actually killing your natural biome. We need a diverse, robust microbiome, and it's wrecking them. So that's why with something like Splenda, a lot of people report like diarrhea and digestive upset from these sweeteners, and then also neurological issues. Like you see written there, they're neurotoxic. And that is because of the gut-brain connection. So we have feedback from the gut to the brain. So if you're wrecking the gut lining, causing inflammation in the gut lining, and then disturbing the natural microbiota, the microbiome, that's going to be a major issue. But let me just, there was a review. I love reading like the reviews of research, and there was a review that basically showed that chronic digestive inflammatory disorders, that basically evidence suggests that artificial sweeteners may induce pro-inflammatory changes in the gut bacteria and the gut wall immune reactivity, which negatively affects the individuals and makes them susceptible to chronic inflammatory conditions like IBS, IBD. Also, there was relationship with aspartame linked to behavioral and cognitive problems, so neurophysiological symptoms, including headaches, seizures, migraines, irritable moods, anxiety, depression, and insomnia. And it goes into just say the way it affects the metabolic pathways of some of the amino acids and so forth. And the other problem with these sweeteners is that they add other chemicals to them as fillers. An example is maltodextrin. Maltodextrin in itself is pro-inflammatory. Normally that comes from genetically modified corn or wheat, and it is a very fine powder that causes inflammation in the body. So those are the artificial sweeteners to avoid, and just understand how they wreak havoc in our systems, and they're not worth it. But then people may ask, well, what about stevia and monk fruit or sugar alcohols, which are the natural alternatives? So I would caution on these as well, but for me, they're not never items. I would allow them in maybe a keto dessert, or as an ingredient in something, but I'm not going to choose to consume these a lot. I used to consume more of these when I lived in the US, but outside of the US, one, I just don't have access to maybe some of the brands and foods that I would get at Whole Foods when I lived there. And so there's just not a need for those. I honestly would rather just have my coffee or tea without a sweetener, and I actually just don't desire that sweet taste anymore. So if you are someone that you do feel dependent on some type of sweetener, I would encourage you to take a hiatus, and then you'll realize that you really don't need it as much anymore. But they do serve a purpose, just as a treat in a baked good or something like that. The next one is food dyes. And gosh, my husband and I haven't done these for many, many years. But unfortunately, the population group that is susceptible or falls victim to the food dyes are our children, because they're in the kids' products to make them more fun and desirable. So in the cereals, in the candies, in the cookies, in the cupcakes, in the birthday cake, they're in all the fun food, in the drinks, in the jellos, and then in sauces and even salad dressings, we have these food dyes. And the stark reality is, these are not natural. They're not using beets and carrots and blueberry, which are natural alternatives to food dyes, but they're literally made from petroleum. And the studies have been done on these for years. The worst outcomes have been from the red dyes. So there's a few studies done on Allura Red, which links the dye to colitis. So that's inflammation of the intestinal lining. It upregulates gene expression for basically antimicrobial gene expression. So what it does is it reduces the diversity of your gut microbiome. So it kills off your gut microbiome. Has also been linked to ADHD. Red 3 is the other one. There are some studies that were linking red 3 with thyroid tumors and blue 2 with brain tumors. They ended up disregarding those studies because they said that it wasn't enough evidence. But my rule when it comes to foreign things in my body, I'm always going to play the skeptic, and I'm always going to exercise caution, so that if there has been any hint and link to tumors, cancer, anything adverse, I'm just going to choose to stay away. It's not worth it. And then tetrazine yellow 5 is linked to hives and asthma. Caramel coloring is another one to avoid. So basically any artificial color dyes we want to avoid. It's interesting to see some of these dyes are banned in Europe, some of them are banned in the US, and so there's nothing really consistent here, and we just need to avoid all of them. The other issue, just like with the artificial sweeteners, the dyes are attached to other chemicals. So one example is benzidine, or some of the benzene products, which are cancer causing. So they have cancer causing additives to them, which you don't read that in the ingredient list. So these are extremely bad for your children. Please, it's not worth it at the birthday party. It's just not, it's not worth it to affect your child's brain health, gut health, and just general inflammation. The third one is seed oils. So I've listed here the hateful 8. And just so you know, my first webinar was all on seed oils, so I'm not going to go too in depth with these. You can revert to that webinar. It is on my YouTube channel. Just go to Bridget Spurgeon, or it is posted in the Facebook group. But the seed oils that you want to avoid at all costs, it's just not worth it. It's canola oil, also labeled rapeseed oil, or colza oil in Europe, soybean oil, corn oil, sunflower oil. By the way, sunflower oil is in a lot of like organic and quote unquote healthier products and chips, because sunflower oil, I think in our minds, we think is healthy, but it is not. It is a seed oil, cottonseed oil, safflower oil, grapeseed oil, and rice bran oil. And so the reason why these are so bad, just to summarize, there are omega-6s, which are pro-inflammatory. They're high in linoleic acid, and their manufacturing produces toxic byproducts. And so these, when heated and with their processing, are very toxic for the body. So definitely check out my previous webinar on the seed oils. The next group is going to be preservatives. Unfortunately, the list of preservatives is quite long and very hard to encompass all of those, but I do want to empower you with these artificial preservatives to avoid and look out for in your ingredients. So basically, here's a way to remember it. If you don't know what it is, you can't read it, don't understand it, it's probably a preservative that you don't want. If a food is preserved in a healthy way, it's preserved with salt. For me, salt is a standard, vinegar would be, and some spices would be good preservatives as well. Citruses as well, like lemon juice would be a preservative. So just some top ones: sodium nitrate or nitrites, anything nitrate, nitrite, you want to observe that. That's found a lot in processed meats. You don't want to have deli meat, hot dogs, processed meats. TBHQ will just be labeled TBHQ sulfites, BHA, BHT, propylene glycol. Just another P one I'm thinking of is polysorbate 80, polysorbate 20. Those are really bad. MSG, which is monosodium glutamate. I actually have a whole separate slide next talking a little bit about MSG once again, because I am talking to an Asian market right now. RBGH, you'll find that in dairy products. Sodium benzoate, very bad. Some of these are found, like sodium benzoate, propylene glycol, carrageenan. You'll find these in like sunscreens and lotions and some body care products as well. So we also need to be looking out in those products. Or toothpaste would be another example. So carragenans in a lot of things, and then chlorine dioxide. So let's go into MSG. MSG also has other names, so just look out for anything like, so even if it could be sodium glutamate or maybe just glutamate. They have over the years changed the names because of the bad press, basically, for marketing. But MSG is a flavor enhancer. It has a very, like a signature Asian taste or umami taste. But outside of like Asian foods or Chinese foods, it's also found in fast foods, soups, salad dressings, and many processed foods. And I do like sometimes I will see restaurants that will label MSG free, but this will be present in a lot of restaurants as well. And there might be a link if there's something a little bit, don't quote me on this, but if there's something a little bit addictive about it as well. So MSG, when you read through the research, I actually had to stop reading it because I was going over some reviews on research over the years, and it just was it affected so many parts of the body and systems and diseases. It was making me a bit angry that this is allowed into our food supply. It is cardiotoxic, so toxic for the heart and the way the heart functions, hepatotoxic, so for the liver, and neurotoxic for the brain. It's linked to obesity and diabetes, so it does affect metabolic pathways, and then affects the central nervous system. So you'll see a kind of a classic anecdotal side effect from MSG ingestion could be a headache or a migraine. And so I'm speaking to different people have different reactions to this, but these are just some of the top ones that I've found in the research. So be really mindful of, I mean, I hate to say it, but very traditional Asian foods, and then obviously fast foods, processed foods, things like that. Look at ingredients and seek out places that advertise that they are MSG free. Oh, that's also found in like soy sauces and a lot of the sauces. So that concludes, those are the 4 things that I just say are they're not worth it, they're never. Now I'm going to go into also some highly inflammatory ingredients or foods. However, I think for some people it's very hard. For some people, if you have an inflammatory condition, you have chronic disease, you have weight to lose, you need to heal your body, then these items I would also keep out of your diet 100%. Just to be fully transparent, I do not keep the next couple of items out of my diet 100%. I'm really not at a state where I am in a healing mode, but I will take periods where I might say, okay, for the month, absolutely no sugar, sugar-free. My husband, last year, he went what did he do? 90 days. He was wanting his A1C to go down. He did 90 days sugar-free. So it's, there are different seasons of healing. I think when you're in a healing program or healing season, it's worth it to reset the body and to cut these things out. The other thing, something like sugar and even grains, they're just highly addictive and they're really hard. And it's like the more we eat them, the more we want to eat them, but then the worse we feel. So sugar, there's nothing nutritive about sugar. It's highly processed, it's void of nutrients. And now when I talk about sugar, I'm talking about table sugar, but this could be white sugar, brown sugar. But then I'm also talking about the syrups. And so these are like the sugar derivatives, especially the high fructose corn syrup. By the way, syrups are, I don't put those in my body. So, gosh, unless maybe I'm in a restaurant and I have a dessert and I don't know that it has it in it, but I typically don't choose very suspicious desserts. I choose my desserts very wisely. No food coloring, not super high in sugar, things like that. But beware of high fructose corn syrup, any kind of corn syrup, glucose syrup, fructose syrup, any kind of syrup. Just stay away from those. These are highly addictive. When they've done studies on how the brain responds to sugar, the brain lights up the same as it does from heroin. The sugar triggers the pro-inflammatory cytokines, which basically affect everything in the body. They affect the liver. By the way, high fructose corn syrup just basically causes fatty liver disease, causes the liver just to make fat, causes inflammation and disruption in the gut microbiome and in the gut lining, causes inflammation in the brain. I mentioned that with Alzheimer's being type 3 diabetes, and then in the blood vessels, which would cause inflammation in the blood vessels, which can lead to damage and clogging. So sugar, nothing good there. So I got a question earlier on the webinar. So what sugars or quote unquote sweeteners are okay? And so my answer is honey, like a raw honey, a manuka honey. There are some beautiful honeys out there. Why? Yes, they do have that glycemic response in your body. However, they have nutritive value. So, so honey would be one. Maple syrup, if it is pure maple syrup, is another one. And look for the better grades of that. Basically, the darker syrup is going to be better. I believe that would be higher in antioxidants. Blackstrap molasses is another one that's good, like a date sugar or a coconut sugar would be better. And what would be, I'm trying to think if there would be another one. And then sometimes in ingredients, I don't think this is the best, but in like some organic products, like an organic cane sugar, that's also, for my husband and I, when we're looking at things, those would be permissible. But otherwise, you know, sugar, it's just the sugar crops, the processing, everything involved within is highly toxic. We can just call sugar a toxin. And then the last group of items that I'm going to talk about is gluten. Once again, knowing that I'm limited on time for this webinar, I couldn't include like all inflammatory foods. I just had to cherry pick the top ones, which I felt are going to impact the most people. And so my next top one is going to be gluten, which is found in wheat, barley, and rye. Gluten basically is the protein present in those grains, and people just have a lot of adverse reactions. Certainly, you have people that have celiac disease, which is an autoimmune condition where there is disarray in the immune system, and the body has started to attack the intestinal lining. Then you have people that will have gluten intolerance, so it's not on the autoimmune level, but they clearly have, and almost sometimes an immediate response to eating gluten, whether that be GI distress, having diarrhea, having bloating, having pain, having skin reactions, and also very often affects brain function. So that could relate in, I speak to a lot of people, they have really bad brain fog or anxiety or depression, or even just general fatigue. And joint pain is a really common one from gluten as well. So those are the symptoms that people have. Generally, I think it's best if we can just all avoid gluten. I think generally it is inflammatory, but do I think that there are healthy people that can have gluten in their diet? Absolutely. The key is having the better, like having a sourdough bread, having a less refined bread, or a bread or a pasta that doesn't have a lot of ingredients in it. But generally, we should not be eating gluten on a daily basis, and we should not be having large quantities of that. And that goes for everyone. Now, that being said, if we just zoom out a little bit and look at the bigger picture, when I am working with my clients, my number one goal with my clients, because I said I want to address the root cause of the problem. I believe inflammation is a root cause, and I believe food is a root cause of inflammation as well. That doesn't mean that's 100%. There are other causes of inflammation. I mean, literally literally stress can cause inflammation. Trauma can cause inflammation. But when we're addressing food, my number one priority working with my clients is to get inflammation down. So one of the things I do is I take out all inflammatory foods. So it's more than just gluten for my clients. I actually take them off grains in general. And because grains in general are inflammatory. Now, that doesn't mean that grains are always bad. It just means we shouldn't be eating them in large quantities. We shouldn't eat refined grains. And, ideally, if we are eating grains, we should make sure that we're doing grains that are more nutrient dense. Sprouted grains are optimal. Our body's going to respond better to those. So I just did want to make that reference and just help you understand that I do come from that mindset that as a whole, grains are inflammatory and should be limited in our diets. And then I will just mention probably a close number 8 in this category would be casein and dairy as well. I love dairy and I consume dairy, and I do include good quality dairy in my programs, but it is one that a lot of people can be sensitive to, especially if you over consume it, and especially if you're not doing the right kinds of dairy. All right. So just as we wrap up today, I shared this on a previous slide, but just, when I'm taking everything out of the diet, I want to help you move forward and have solutions to replace the bad things. So just some simple reminders to eat a whole food, nutrient dense diet, foods that are free of GMOs and pesticides. And that it doesn't have to be restrictive, just eating whole good foods. They taste better, they're healthier for you, you'll probably end up saving you money. Adjust your carbohydrate intake, because just in general, carbohydrates, especially refined carbohydrates, are inflammatory. And I said I was going to mention the ages, which are advanced glycation end products. Those cause inflammation in the body. They accumulate in the body as we age, and they are responsible for a lot of chronic diseases, but also, like I mentioned, our skin wrinkling. And so this premature aging that happens. And these advanced glycation end products, they are a result of basically lipids and proteins. So lipids being fats, floating around in the body. They get glycated, and what glycated means is sugar attaches to them or covers them, and so now that's going around the body and producing damage and havoc, basically producing oxidative stress in the body and causing breakdown in the body, causing inflammation. So what causes this glycation to happen? It is carbohydrates that are heated. So that might be from fried foods, things like fries and fried chicken and chips, and but even something like toast. And so I was telling someone earlier, it's like, well, I really love my toast and butter. So I'm not saying to never have toast, just don't overeat these foods. And maybe if you are doing some toast, this is a reminder not to have very well done crispy toast, but to do that lightly. All right. And then the third thing, so important, and make sure you do go back and listen to the seed oils webinar, but replacing those seed oils with oxidative stable fats. And also remember, these oxidative stable fats, these omega-3 fats and saturated fats, they are going to help our body fight inflammation. They are, these fats are anti-inflammatory. So that's going to be like your olive oil, your avocado, your coconut oil, your butter, and your animal fats, like your grass-fed animal fats. Just some tips: purge your pantry, read the labels, just honestly throw out or donate any foods that have any of these toxic ingredients, these inflammation-causing ingredients, including your supplements. Remember to look at the ingredients on your supplements. You could be taking something every day that you think is making you healthier that actually is causing inflammation in your body. I do a supplement assessment for all of my onboarding clients, and I would say 70 to 80% of my clients, they are taking supplements that are actually causing them to be inflamed. Commit to home-cooked meals. Research your local restaurants. You can ask them questions before you go in. Look at the menu. Customize your order. For example, if I'm going to get some scrambled eggs, I may ask them to cook them in butter, not vegetable oil. I literally have clients that realize that they are actually allergic to these toxic ingredients. So then in a restaurant, they just tell them, look, I have a food allergy. I can't have certain oils. So please make sure that you don't use that in my food. But you also can identify food allergies through elimination diets. By the way, the programs that I offer, they do form as elimination diets for inflammation and for metabolism. And so that's something that I pull all the inflammatory things out, and then I will help my clients slowly reintroduce them to see how their body uniquely responds to those things. And then another tip is to carry activated charcoal with you. That is a great supplement to have at home or have in your purse when you accidentally eat an ingredient that you don't want to. This helps to bind the toxin and get it out your body. Can also it can help with responses to like a histamine response. I had just a great example of being stung by a jellyfish, and I started having a histamine reaction, severe pains in my abdomen, a rash started breaking out of my body, and I was having a severe histamine reaction, and I took activated charcoal, and within minutes the pain went away and the inflammation started to subside. So I was sold on activated charcoal. I literally have it wherever I am in the world. It is one of those supplements I want to keep with me all the time. So there are your tips. And just as I wrap up here, I want to recognize our partners in KL. We have 2 Seeds Origin locations, a great venue for healthy food. They are very aware and conscientious in the way that they cook their food with organic coconut oil, and they use mindful, nutrient-dense ingredients, including buckwheat, which is a grain substitute. It is a nutrient-dense seed, and then the noodles as well. So it's a great way to feel like you're eating carbs, but having something healthy. They have a location in PJ and then in KLCC. And then we have Wellness Origin in KL, which is a wellness center for any of your lab testing or healing needs there. And then my most popular program right now is my holistic healing strategy. We have healing pods where we heal in community. This is an 8-week program, helps you engage in fasting, detoxing, and organ-specific nutrient healing. And if anyone does need a consult with me to customize a strategy for whatever you are dealing with, that QR code goes to my schedule. So feel free to schedule a free 30-minute consult with me or go to my website, bridgetspurgeon.com. You can also find me on all social media platforms. Just search my name, Bridget Spurgeon. And I look forward to seeing you on the next webinar. Our next webinar will be on the science of intermittent fasting. We'll see you then.